Okay, so thank you for joining this evening, everyone. So today we have invited Professor Taekyoon Kim from Seoul National University. He is a professor of international development, and he is the director of planning Korea Academic Council on the United Nations system. And he holds a BA in sociology and an MA in international cooperation. And he graduated with a PhD in international relations and also in deep field in social policy and intervention from University of Oxford. So today he's going to talk about the new standards of civilization and global governance in crisis in the era of COVID-19. Okay, so we're gonna give him a round of applause and let's welcome him.
Thank you for the nice introduction. My name is Taekyoon Kim. Today it's my great honor to give a very short speech on the issue of new standard of civilization, particularly in the era of the corona pandemic. So I'm going to share some of the points, especially by using some theories in international relations. Mainly the English school, so-called international society theory. And also I'm going to bring up some of the current hot issues, how we can reform global governance, because the major countries such as US, Japan, and China, I think they're also UK, they're now highlighting some of the national interest-based foreign policy. So like the retreat of global governance or liberal international order. So that is the main thing of the crisis to handle current pandemic, as well as how to reform the current, architecture of global governance. So the many things like the very big and comprehensive the issues I would like to raise today. And then so I will discuss together with all students attending this lecture. So hopefully you can enjoy my lecture, as well as you can also participate in a debating. Okay, so I'm going to share my slide. Right, can you see this? And also my voice is okay. I mean, somebody told me like I have some the noises. Is all right? Is that all good?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Hmm. I think it's not working. All right, so I'm just using just like as it is. So the topic, as I said, the new standard of civilization and global governance crisis, especially in the era of current pandemic. So I would like to start with the sociological perspective, so-called world risk society. So as you know, the Uli Bach, the German sociologist, he is like very famous in terms of the kind of conceptualization, how we can understand, the risks and crisis in our society. So at the national level, we can bring up like the risk of society concept. So the environmental issues and human rights, views, and all the particular sets of, the multiple the crises and risks in society. And also we can just, like to move up to the global level, so-called the World Risk Society. So from that concept, some expanded conceptualization risk society to the world, global governance, and then we can just apply that concept to current situation, current pandemic. So how we can consider what is the origin of current pandemic, and then how international society responded to the crisis risks at the global level, and also some of the reflective perspective, how we need to reflect why and how the current pandemic occurred, and then the so-called like the power politics at the national as well as global level. So U.S. led, the global South, global North, and then maybe China led, global south. So it's like the dichotomy, current situation. Some, China lead to, kind of as a hegemony power leading, the global south, I mean, the developing countries. So the China is now the distributing like the vaccine. So China, the product of vaccine. So as like the diplomatic, the method, and also the U.S. dominated the whole the distribution mechanism and supply chain of the vaccine for corona the disease. So it's kind of the war between the U.S. led and China led, also representing the global north and global south. So the how we can perceive these kind of situations. So it is like the risk of society at the global level. If so, how we can make some the solution, and then how we can make the new standard of civilization, new order of global governance. So that's the very, very important, I mean, crucial topic for everyone. I think the global north and global south, like the globe as a whole. So that's why I brought back this kind of notion, global or world risk of society. And also another the British scholar sociologist Anthony Giddens, the concept, the modernity and the flexibility. So all nations are modernized, and then probably you are very familiar with the modernization theory. There's like the 1960s, 1970s, like the kind of the maxim of how we can enhance national economic development or growth. So following like the Western pattern of national economic growth. So that is the kind of the key path of the modernization. So the economically how boost up the economic growth and also democratization in terms of the political affairs. So very much in the westernized concept, that is the modernization. But according to the Anthony Giddens, we have to reflect, this is a real answer to the developing countries. I mean, there should be just one answer about the question, what is the main, like the path for the economic, the well-being and economic welfare, and then the more betterment of social life. So there could be the different ways, right? So every single state, it has like its own way of national development. So ownership, I think you guys know the Paris Declaration. So 5 principles of the Paris Declaration. The first one, I mean, top priority of Paris Declaration back in 2005. That is the ownership. So we have to respect all the ownership. I mean, locality of the local government, local people. So that is like the kind of effort how we can make some the reflection of the current like the phenomenon. So probably you can develop your own lens or your own framework to I think the shape or reshape your understanding about the corona pandemic, and then the lack of global governance, the lack of, I mean, the world, like the effort to reduce or flatten the corona curve. So I'm going to highlight this slide, the risk of society, and that we have to upgrade from the national level to the world risk of society. And also, I'm going to highlight the modernity and the flexibility. That's I think, the better kind of approach to I think, rethink the main cause or the main reason of, the current crisis, risks, so-called the corona pandemic. And the next slide, I don't know why this is not working. Okay, anyway, so new standard of civilization. So now this is a highlight of theorizing, and then the theoretical perspective to the today topic. That is the English school or international society. So the meaning, all right, so meaning is like the international relation theory. I don't know you are familiar with the IR, I mean, international relation theory. So very much dominated by the US, the scholars. after the Second World War. So they need like the theory to support and sustain the U.S. foreign policy. So that's why the realism and liberalism or social constructivism. So there are many different, the theories. But the UK, I mean, the British scholar, they just can't argue that we cannot, the judge or manage the world affairs by using just only, realism. I mean, state-centered approach, or the liberalism, like the utopian understanding about the international affairs. So they just propose like alternative, the theory. That is the international. Oh, that is the international society theory. And then they're also using the concept, the standard civilization. So if you look at the whole history of the humankind, there are different like critical juncture. For example, Greek, the period, very long time ago. And then the Hellenism, and also, the expansion of the imperialism, and then the colonization and decolonization, and also globalization. So every single round of global, the globalized world, they have their own pattern of civilization. So set up like the new standard, civilization that depends on different, time span of the human history. And also, if any single state or the collective entity denied that standard of civilization, that country, that entity just regarded as the barbarian, right? It's not, civilized nation. So that's why the civilization standard is very much, I think, kind of threat. According to the standard civilization, if you comply with that standard, you one of the member of the society, global society, or the regional society. Otherwise, just blamed as like the outlier or barbarian. So this is like main the framework of the English school scholars to figure it out. This is the this country or that country as the main member of globalized society. So we can see here the plague of the malaria, the smallpox and Black Death, or the some kind of disease. The pandemic related disease. Through the history of humankind, disseminated the indigenous population, and here even whole civilizations. So that's why the remaining survived, the people and nations, they need like the new standard of civilization because they want to set up new set of globalization or global governance, regional governance, kind of new order. So in that sense, we can try to understand what is the next step of the corona pandemic. What is the post-corona era, the international relations? What could be the global governance in the next step? So we can all witness like the U.S. Now it's Biden got the power, and then he just emphasized the American new role, right? So America is back, and then we are always like ready to support the global governance, support the liberal international order. But actually, in reality, the Biden administration, they now preoccupied distribution mechanism of the vaccines as the main instrument of the diplomacy, right, to contain its alliance, and also like the containment against the Chinese influence. So that's why this point, the new standard civilization, what could be a new standard civilization in the post-corona, pandemic era? So that is the main question. And then we have to tackle, we always think, what is the next step? So this is my today main topic I would like to share with you. So if you look at this is the expansion of international society. So I just already briefly mentioned some of the historical evolution of international society from the ancient Greek Hellenic. So the what was the major unit of analysis at that time? So the independent city states. And also we have another historical juncture, the Renaissance in Italian. So the state system and early modern European era, that is the so very famous like treaty. That's the Westphalia Treaty back in 1648. So the it produced like the concept of Europe. So from this point of view, this point of time, so the exact concept of statehood, it is defined by the Westphalia Treaty. So what is the state? So according to Westphalia in a tradition, state means it has clear-cut territory and sovereignty, right? So it has the autonomy to make some the foreign policy without like the the intervention from the outside. So theoretically speaking, all states, all nations are equal, right? As the main actor and representing the local people. So far until now, we now using the concept of the Westphalia Treaty. So what is the state? It's like the nation state with the territory and also very autonomy. On the basis of the sovereignty. So the international law, under the international law, all states are equal, and then the autonomy, the actor. Right, so if you look at the next stage, European international societies, like expansion of the European international society. So of course, we have the keyword like here, colonization, imperialism, right? From the expansion from the European states down to Africa, and then the moving towards like China and then East Asia and also Latin America. So all remaining the world, the colonized by the European powers. So that is the typical example of the international society. So it's kind of a society sharing norms and rules set by the powerful states. So European states in this period of time. So think about it, the African states, they denied, we cannot accept these norms and rules based of the global governance, which were set by and decided by the European power. If they do that, that country, as I said, regarded as barbarian. You're not civilized, you're uncivilized people. So you have to be socialized by our power, our like the education system, our engagement into that country. So it sounds like very tricky and also very, I think the dreadful, right? But this is a kind of real mechanism to figure out what is the main standard of civilization. And also what is the next step? The globalization. So now the globalized international society is not European international society. It's more likely, the globalized. So all nations in the world, they are now, the globalized under the one kind of the kind of philosophical and also the working kind of theory, that is the globalization. Liberal international order. Or of course, the order, it is like set by the U.S. led, I think, European and other the like-minded countries such as Japan. So the neoliberal globalization. So you are very familiar with the neoliberalism, right? So since late 1980s, so Washington Consensus, and then all the aid conditionality designed by the World Bank is so harsh against the recipient countries because the economic reforms always are used as the conditionality of World Bank aid or loans to the developing countries. So that is like the product of neoliberal ideology as like the working mechanism to sustain the globalization. So if you see that here, the era of the two superpowers, that is the story about the Cold War, the Soviet Union versus the U.S. and also contemporary international society. So this means like after the 1980s and up to 2008. when the what is that, the Wall Street kind of economic crisis occurred. So back in 2008. So the actually 2008 Lehman Brothers, the bankruptcy, and it's the impact on like the Wall Street crisis. There's actually the first momentum for retreat of neoliberal globalization. So the U.S. stepped back from the globalization, the kind of ideology. Also, the UK just started the debate that discussed like Brexit, like the exit from the EU, and also China has like the new dream as the giant or the hegemonic power, led by the Xi Jinping, and also Japan, the Shinzo Abe, the former Prime Minister of Japan, he just began to talk about the normalization state, so normal state. That's the new, the proposed goal of the Japan by the reforming like the constitutions. So anyway, the strongman, like the Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, and the Boris Johnson in UK, and Shinzo Abe in Japan. Now is the Suga, right? The Suga is the new prime minister in Japan. So the little bit like the protecting their own economy and national interest. So the back to the like the protectionism or the nation interest based like foreign policy. So that's why it's give very negative impact on global governance. So global governance, what is the meaning of global governance? We don't have in the world government. So, but we have like the common problem, world problem, global problem that is such as climate change and then human rights issues, and also like the disease such as corona pandemic. So who's gonna be governing, all the globalized issues? So we need the kind of the collaboration, cooperation, right, through the international organizations such as the mainly, the UN and then World Bank and other institutions. But if you see that WTO is not working well because the individual states, they want to, they set up like the FTA, free trade agreement, right? That's kind of bilateral agreement. It's not multilateral. So multilateral is not weakening. And then the bilateral, like the engagement and the agreement and cooperation, it's like the mainstream now. So it's a booming industry, right? So, and then the post-corona pandemic. So this is today's topic, right? So what will happen, and then how we can prepare, and what could be a next new standard of civilization, not globalization, not the formal set of the globalized internet society. So we need a new normal. So we need like the new set, new form of global governance. Right, so I don't have the exact answer to that question. So it's like a common question, and we have to work together to find out the more positive, more desirable, more plausible, the path for the new set of the standards of civilization in the post-corona era. Okay, so now I'm going to throw out the different question in order to boost up the thinking about the new set of new standards of the civilization. So do authoritarian or democratic states handle the pandemic better? So which type of the regime, political regime, is better to handle corona pandemic? So if you see the authoritarian regime first, so there are some varieties of the responses conducted by authoritarian regime states in handling the current pandemic indeed. So the success case or failure case, if you see the success case, China, Singapore. So Singapore is not the full-blown democracy. Government has very strong leadership, or always like intervening into the everyday life of citizens. So we just categorize Singapore, normally like as one of authoritarian or the quasi, democratic states. Anyway, so those two states are quite the success cases. even though China at the first stage, China is like the origin of the Wuhan, I mean, the base corona, disease, but they are very quickly handle and control the corona pandemic. So we can just categorize China as a success, one of the success cases. How about failure of the authoritarian regime? So Iran, Turkey, so quite the obvious. But the question is the variations of the democratic states. It's very, very, I think, the interesting. So success case, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, very few number of democratic states as success. How about failure? So many, right? Incredible. So G7, US, UK, France, Germany, and Japan, and India, and Spain, and I think they even Nordic, Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. So this is this is related to the how to handle the corona pandemic. It's not the talking about the vaccination. So the vaccination is a different topic because the U.S. is now dominating. As I already mentioned, the U.S. has the I think the biggest number of the vaccines, right? For its own, the people as well as the its allies, like the South Korea just received it from the Biden administration, I think 1 billion doses. I can't remember the exact number, but that doses distributed to the military army, soldiers in South Korea. So the U.S. now the manipulating and using the vaccines as the very critical like the instrument to protect its own like the foreign policy, and also kind of very good asset to contain or the compare with the China. So interesting point is political regime does not matter, right? So before corona pandemic, like the democratic states, like the real answer, or the best model to modernize, or the civilized, or it is the best option of political leaders to handle all diseases or the problem. But now we cannot counter argue, or you can question again or speak to yourself. Democracy is the answer. I don't know. So it's quite the open question. And then the next question is, who will be the right actor to reshape global governance in the post-corona era? So now we can believe US. Now we can believe like the G7. How about the China? So we can believe the China. So this is another open question. I don't know. I don't have any idea about the exact answer to that question. So if you look at the decline, the neoliberal globalization after 2008 financial crisis, I already mentioned this. So this is the initial, I think, the point of the event, and also the impact of financial crisis in 2008 had been the increasing further and further. And then the global society, international society got the external kind of shock. That's the corona pandemic. So now the neoliberal globalization is not the answer for everyone, right? To survive under the corona pandemic. So we need kind of a new type or alternative type of globalization or global governance rather than neoliberal globalization. And the second point, rebirth of the nationalistic protectionism by strong men, by strong states. So US, this is the Donald Trump, kind of motto, America First strategy. And he withdrew the membership from the WHO, and also the COP21, the Paris, the agreement of climate change, the endorsed by the UN back in 2015. Of course, the Biden, as soon as he got the power, he just promised we're gonna back to WHO and back to membership of COP21. UK, the Brexit, and still the Boris Johnson is quite a conservative, party-based, politics. So he always mentioned how to protect the UK, economy, and then one of the evidence of that Boris Johnson, I think this year, early this year, back in 2012, UK DFID, you know the DFID is just like the in South Korea the KOICA. So DFID, Department of International DFID, what is that? Department for International Development, right? Sorry about it. So 2012, UK government officially declared we are going to satisfy 0.7% of GNI as ODA because UN always, like kind of encourage all the OECD member, the advanced the economies or the inner school of OECD, please satisfy the threshold of UN, the ODA as a budget. That is the suggestion or the kind of encouragement by the UN to all the major donor countries. That is the 0.7% of the GNI as ODA. That's kind of international standard. So UK officially, wow, yeah, we're gonna accept that. So the 2012, only 5 countries or 7 countries in the world, they just comply with the 7% of the ODA GNI as ODA principle. So one of them is the UK. But UK 2012, they officially declared and promised that we're gonna allocate the 0.7% of GNI as ODA. But early this year, Boris Johnson just we cannot do that anymore because of the current pandemic. So, and also the UK government, they emphasize the national interest. National interest should be backbone of DFID foreign aid. So it's like the back to kind of the the protectionism the period of time. So there are many symptoms or the evidences how we can see nationalistic the protectionism in current years. And also Japan, as I said, normal states which can do worse. So the by reforming the constitutions, they justify the Japanese troops for a kind of war engagement, maybe the neighboring countries and the foreign overseas, like in Africa, in the form of the peacekeeping operation. And then they finally China, the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, right? 일대일로 in Korean. So China is kind of internationalization domestic policies. So they have a big plan from the China, the eastern side, and then through the Central Asia, or the Africa, and then up to the Eastern Europe, even the UK. So it has I think the huge and grand strategy to the expand Chinese like the interest as well as the kind of by contract like the infrastructure, the support to neighboring countries, the following the line of the BRI. So now some countries are now falling into the debt crisis, huge debt. So the example, I think, for example, is the Pakistan. So the Pakistan, the signed up the contract with China, so-called the China-Pakistan, economic corridor project. But the huge debts always like the main problem of the infrastructure-based contract, so the loan project. So they declared like kind of the bankruptcy, and they asked the International Monetary Fund for beta program. And also Sri Lanka and the Malaysia and they negated. So the many, the examples about the debt crisis in terms of the China and then the BRI, the engagement. So it's gonna be, I think, major problem for the next step. Next, like the standardization of civilization in the current pandemic, or it's gonna be the opportunity because China is now the little bit of reform its own policies, so-called the Health Silk Road initiative. the Silk Road Initiative. That is the origin, one of the part of the original plans of the BRI. But now, after the current pandemic, Xi Jinping little bit revised Silk Road project by adding the health. So the highlighting the health, security, and then provided the Chinese vaccines to the, the countries. I mean, the supportive countries for the BRI project. So I will show you the big map after that. And then the declining power of the multilateral cooperation. So WHO, can you believe the WHO? I mean, is quite the transparent and accountable international organization. Why did the Donald Trump highly and harshly criticize the WHO about the initial responses to corona pandemic, especially Wuhan, based the corona. So we can criticize WHO, but you need to know inside like the structure of financing. That is the major cause of the WHO, especially lack of, the responses. I mean, the relevant responses to the corona, the problem. So I will, later explain what is the financial structure of United Nations as a whole. So UN agencies, they share the very similar problems of financing, just like the WHO. So that's why WHO needed to listen very carefully to Chinese voices of Chinese the demands rather than US, because that, I mean, structural problem to financing. Okay, so next one. Oh, so the need for the new leadership. So we cannot believe the authoritarianism. We cannot believe the democratic states. We cannot believe G7. We cannot believe US. We cannot believe US the alliances, EU, and we cannot believe, of course, China. So I mean, who are the right kind of actor to reshape the global governance in the current pandemic? So if you look at here, disorder in the global north due to domestic chaos in advanced economies, so G7 basically, and also China's rising power in global south by its support for developed countries in handling the current pandemic. So China is, I think that's my opinion. So China got the initiative and also the very interest, national interest embedded in the kind of hegemonic role in leading or representing all the voices of global south. So of course in the global south, so there is the BRICS, Brazil, the BRICS, Russia, India, and the South Africa and China. Is kind of the line-minded, the platform for the global south. But if you look at carefully inside the relationship among 5 countries, India and China now is not that kind of good friends to each other, kind of competitor, or sometimes like the source of the contention. Because India is now one of the members of Quad, doing the Quad, like the India Pacific strategy. It's like the regional cooperation led by Donald Trump. So the US, India, Japan, Australia, they made this kind of the new platform for regional cooperation. So India is one of the members, like the participating the US-led Quad. So from the perspective China, oh my God! So the former friend of mine is now the betrayed, and also the joining like US-led partnership, and also EU early this year, EU signed up new agreement with India. So the EU is now started to support India with the very, I think, the huge bump of kind of aid and other in partnership. And also EU decided to give sanctions against China. This is for the first time after the Second World War. So you need to know that it's not a big change of kind of the relationship between the former, ally or former friends And now it suddenly became like the enemy or foes. So the relationship of different countries is now the the shape, the reshuffling. So we have to carefully follow U.S. probably they now thinking or planning of a new standard of civilization. In China also doing like that. And then between two giants, how and which country could be filled the gap left by that kind of the competition. So global north, global south, who's gonna be like working as like bridger or connector between the global north and global south. So the preventing the hegemonic competition for vaccine production and distribution, so-called the vaccine diplomacy, and need for making vaccine as global public good. So probably you guys know COVAX. COVAX is like the platform. The WHO initiated that the platform, and then now as far as no, I mean if the memory is correct, more than 150 countries joined the COVAX. So South Korea, of course, and then the US is still not a member of COVAX. I don't know, you can confirm that. So the COVAX very loosen like the network to share the vaccines, and also the always identify the vaccine as global public good. So no any single country dominate, not allowed to dominate the vaccine. So US now violated the principle of COVAX. I think China as well. So to prepare the train of the crisis from the health security to food security. This is another, I think, the challenge we need to face. So this is not my inner argument. This is the official analysis done by the Secretary General of the United Nations. So Secretary General, he just gave like a warning to everyone in the world. So this year we are suffering from the health crisis, right? But that could be leading to another crisis. That is the food crisis, food shortage. Because all nations just protected their own people. So trade and then the international transactions are weakening dramatically. So if we know the recipient, I mean the developing countries, they kind of cultivate the food or food-related products. Nobody, they can't import those items, just like the before Corona pandemic. So and also the food security leads to the another crisis, that's climate change. Finally, the development crisis as a whole is kind of chaos. So the Secretary General UN, they highlighted this crisis, trade crisis, this is the biggest challenge since the first year of United Nations. So it's a total crisis. So we have to know that. And then finally, leading a new multilateral cooperation through a new leadership. Yeah, this is, I mean, absolutely we need that. But the problem is, and question is, who's going to be rule taker, who's going to be rule setter, and then who is the financing this kind of roadmap of global governance and reform of global governance. Right, this is, as I said, the Chinese aid for the combating COVID-19. So whole map, if you look at here, so BRI cooperation agreements. So BRI is like from here through the Central Asia and then Eastern Europe and also Africa, right? So this point, all points are now, the kind of the health crisis point. So lack of vaccines, the huge expansion of the COVID-19. So that's why if you look at the next slide, China is planned also implementing, to provide the vaccines. So China is now the full, national vaccines, and one vaccine is like product. China, working with the external cooperation. So all in all, China now has the 5 different, vaccines. So China distributed the Sinopharm or the CanSino Bio and other 3 vaccine through the following the BRI, Belt and Road. So this is the huge project, right? And then the revive, and then I think the revive of the the BRI, project. So BRI, everyone knows, like, the before Corona pandemic, what is the main critique against the BRI? That crisis, right? Too much, the debt imposed by China on the recipient, partner countries. So the China is through the opportunities of Corona pandemic, they can provide the vaccines, and then using the vaccine diplomacy. I mean, they can make another kind of image of China. So I mean, enhancing public image of China as like the more positive. I think that all in all, China is like designing or aiming to set up the new standard of civilization, or the kind of new order, as a representative of the global South. I mean, through the BRI project and the vaccinations. Okay, so I think I almost done. So I know that you guys like the very sick and tired of it, because now I think dinner time is coming up. So you are now a little bit hungry. So they are finished up my part of it when possible, and then you can have the break time, and after that we can talk about or you can ask my questions to me, and I will try my best to answer those questions. So finally, the middle power coalition in a new normal. So that is one of main arguments. So as I said, there are global North and the global South. Global North, I think the mainly U.S.-led, the like-minded countries, the EU and Japan. Now India joined, U.S.-led coalition. So that the small number of strong power, or the powerful countries, they dominating the international order of the global North, right? By the dominating, controlling the vaccine, the distribution mechanism. And also China has the leading role to, I think, they represent the global South. So of course, also just like what the US does now, through the vaccination, vaccine diplomacy. So in between, like the global North and global South alliances system, there could be the big hole or big room where remaining countries, they can play a very significant role in the bridging and the connecting two different, like the world, or two different, like the standard of civilization, because US always like highlight the return of the liberal international order, and China has its own, like kind of huge grand strategy. So this like the big kind of clash of civilization, just like Samuel Huntington highlights clashes of civilization back in the late 1990s. So probably middle power coalition, middle power collaboration, such as the success countries in handling COVID-19, because they have the know-how how to handle COVID-19. So also they can have some kind of justification as a new leading countries to shape and reshape the global governance. So the middle power coalition, so mainly South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, all of which are democracies and relative success cases in handling COVID-19. I think so quite the right actors were able to form a middle-power alliance coalition in collaboration with the Germany and Nordic states, because the relatively speaking, Germany and Nordic countries, they are quite the quasi and success, the states in comparing with the other G7 or the remaining EU countries. And also this is another point, the Sendai framework. Probably it is very foreign to you guys. What is the Sendai framework? Sendai framework is like endorsed by the UN back in 2015. It's kind of paralleling, the agreement with the Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs) in 2015. So it's the specializing how to handle the natural disease such as the earthquake, tsunami, and other natural disease, excepting the kind of COVID-19, right? So infectious disease. So the Sendai framework is, I think, has the another very important opportunity to be upgraded by the inserting the how to to control infectious disease. So probably the like-minded countries of the Middle Power Coalition, they are all success cases. They have kind of their own the know-how how to handle, and that they can share like the what is common knowledge, experiences in the making like the well, I mean the flattening the COVID-19 curve. So they can engage in a center framework by sharing or the giving a kind of know-how about the infectious disease like the prescriptions. And then the third one, protecting the vaccine as global public good. That's obvious, the answer to what is the next step for the COVID-19, the problem. So problem is how we can invite US and then China about that, kind of the solution. So they can agree with the vaccine should be considered global public good. Of course, I mean, officially they, declare, they admit like the vaccine should be, the global public good, but the reality is not the kind of chaos. I mean, it's not the case of their claim. And finally, the bridging the global north and global south. That is the another in the mission of the Middle Power Coalition. So, of course, and then as I already mentioned in the very beginning of my lecture, I'm gonna today throw out the big kind of questions, open questions. Even though I don't have the quite the good answer for that, so I can suggest like the big notions, just like the Middle Power Coalition, the new normal, and then the really hopefully to share your views with my very observed in the presentation today. So yeah, this is all I have today. And then thank you very much indeed for your listening. And then yeah, I do hope that we can have another good time for the discussion.